Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we're running a few moments behind our schedule, and so lunch is just a little further away. I will ask our panel to try and keep their comments within about 10 minutes or so each, and hopefully allow some time for a few questions towards the end. We're dealing with a very important subject. I mean, throughout the conference we talk about the evolution, development of Takaful, promoting it and growing it, but in the end we have to regulate it, rate it and risk manage it, and for there to be success all these features must be part of the way we deal with this business. We have 4 eminent speakers well experienced in these areas for you, and we will start off with the regulatory areas, and Suzanne Dingwall from Norton Rose will present pertinent current issues, I suspect, because unfortunately with the law things continue to change. Suzanne?
Thank you very much, Charles, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to speak on the IFSB standard on solvency requirements, and you may be aware that the IFSB has produced these standards for Takaful operators. Working with the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, it has set out important key principles for the structure of solvency requirements for a Takaful operator. The IFSB has taken into account the initiatives by the IAIS on solvency standards that it can benefit from and build on so that it can equate to established conventional international frameworks. The IFSB's principles have 4 main objectives: and to increase the likelihood that Takaful operators will be able to meet their contractual obligations and commitments, to act as an early warning system for regulatory intervention, to provide a buffer so that even if participants suffer a loss, that impact can be reduced or limited, especially any systemic effects, and to foster confidence amongst the general public, and in particular amongst potential participants, in the financial stability of the Takaful sector. The IFSB standard is applicable to all Takaful and Retakaful operators. However, it doesn't automatically apply to Takaful windows, and this will be left up to the discretion of the regulator concerned. The segregation of funds between the Participants' Risk Fund, the PRF, and the Shareholders' Fund, which is a fundamental feature in any Takaful operation, introduces an immediate issue in relation to assessing solvency, which one doesn't get in the conventional insurance space, because segregation just simply isn't important. The IFSB have stated that where funds are segregated, solvency must be considered separately for each fund. A PRF may have little or no independent means of raising capital to meet solvency requirements, and so the Takaful operator will need to find a way to provide the PRF with additional capital if required. A card is frequently used to provide capital to a PRF on the basis that it will be repaid by shareholders out of future surplus in the PRF. And depending on the terms of the card, it may count as eligible capital for regulatory purposes. The fact that the card is held and the assets for the card are held in the shareholders' fund doesn't really matter. They may still be able to be counted as eligible capital for the PRF if local regulation permits it, and depending on the terms on which the assets are held and capable of transfer. Regulators are also going to want to know how the card will operate in an insolvency, and there are 2 ways in which the card could operate. It could rank equally with participants' claims so that any deficiencies are shared pro rata, or participants' claims could rank above any card that's been made but not repaid. And only in this second case will the card be considered to be fully allowed as eligible capital. And this payment priority of drawdown in an insolvency situation is really quite an important issue, which should be disclosed by the Takaful operator to participants as part of the process of transparency. The IFSB standard contains 7 key features for minimum solvency requirements, And the first key feature provides that a whole balance sheet approach should be adopted to ensure consistency in the evaluation of risks and assets. And given that one of the key features of a Takaful undertaking is a separation between the participants and shareholders' funds, the first key feature emphasises that solvency requirements for a Takaful undertaking should be set separately for each fund. If a card is in place to meet these solvency requirements for a PRF, it should be set at a figure which is well above the minimum solvency requirements to allow the PRF to account in any fluctuations in assets and liabilities. The regulator has also got to be satisfied that the assets which are said to be available really are readily available, and in this respect, the regulator can require the assets to be earmarked in the shareholders' fund. The objective of the solvency requirements at the PRF level is to provide a high degree of confidence that the PRF can withstand adverse trading conditions. And therefore, the PRF should hold assets which are equal to the technical provisions, plus additional capital to cover any potential underestimate of the technical provisions and also the risk of any miscalculation of the valuation of assets. The additional solvency capital will be calculated for all risks that could negatively impact the PRF. And this includes the main risks that you would imagine, such as credit risks, market risk, underwriting risk, liquidity risk, and operational risk. Turning to the shareholders' fund, the Takaful operator needs to have sufficient capital to withstand unexpected increases in management expenses and reductions in income. And the assessment of the amount of capital required should take into account any potential volatility of expenses and the level and volatility of the Takaful operator's income. Unless the regulator is happy that other mechanisms of recapitalising the PRF exist, the Takaful operator will be expected to offer a card facility out of its shareholders' fund. And the right to receive repayment of a card that has already been provided should not be counted as an asset for the purposes of assessing whether the Takaful operator can meet its solvency requirements. Turning now to the next key feature, the IFSB has stated that it's essential that there's adequate capital in the PRF and the shareholders' fund to support their respective financial obligations as they fall due. And they've again emphasised that there has to be this clear separation between the funds to ensure that there's no possibility of contagion between them.